Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are here with Jackie Clark, who is our breeding manager as well as our puppy program manager here at PADS. She is also breeder caretaker to PADS Nav, who is here on camera, and her little prank litter. So, Jackie, tell us, how old are these guys now?
So these guys are 14 days old now. And so they're just coming to the end of what we call the transitional period. So rather than being too concerned about how old they are in days or weeks, when we are coordinating our activities with them, we're more concerned about where they are developmentally. So these guys are just finishing the neonatal period. Their eyes, one eye we saw just has started to crack open. And so things are going to start to change here very quickly.
Excellent. So for those of you that are joining in, if you haven't been with us before on a Tune In Tuesday, whether you're joining us on Zoom or you're joining us on Facebook Live, you can ask questions and we'll try and answer them during the broadcast. So you can, if you are on Zoom, if you click the Q&A button, so it's the two little talking bubbles on the Q&A button, and you can type your questions in there. And then if you are on Facebook Live, you can post your questions directly in the comments. Now, if you came across our Facebook Live because you're in one of our Facebook groups, either for our volunteers or clients, be sure to click on the post and type your questions into the main post, because that's the only one that we can't monitor all the places at once. So we're just monitoring on the main one. So if you have questions, feel free to post them there. So, oh my goodness, and questions are coming in. Hang on one second. Oh, hang on just 1 second, and I will be back with everybody. Jackie can just let you all watch cute puppies here for a second. Okay, so Jackie, do you want to tell us a little bit what an average day looks like with these guys right now?
So these guys, they're still pretty easy at this point. And so for the most part, Nav takes pretty good care of them. And so an average day usually involves a load or two of laundry. And then we do some handling exercises with these guys. So handling exercises with neonatal puppies, we generally do two types. We do one type that's called early neural stimulation, where we will handle puppies in ways that promote cardiovascular and neurological development that they wouldn't normally achieve at this age. And so if I just grab a little hex here, we would start by holding him head up for 5 seconds so that the blood drains down from his brain a little bit. His heart's really working to pump it up, which is promoting cardiovascular health. You can see he's not terribly fussed by the whole thing. Then we're going to flip him upside down and hold him upside down for 5 seconds. And now his heart is beating in the other direction and he's peeing on me. And then we would hold him on his back for 5 seconds. He's just going to relax into that. And then we would usually put him on a cold washcloth for 5 seconds and tickle his toes for 5 seconds. And we would do that from the time the puppies are 3 days old till 16 days old with a normal litter. With these guys, they've gotten a little bit less of it than our normal litters were because Nav ended up with an emergency C-section for the last puppy in the litter who was stuck. And so they experienced stress as a result of that between being home without mom for a number of hours while we were at the vet for assessment, and then being at the vet while she was having her surgery so that they could nurse. And then over the following days when she came home, and she was on some painkillers and some antibiotics, and then they developed diarrhea. So because all of that naturally stresses their system, then we tend to back off a little bit on the early neural handling exercises. There's a concept in chemistry called hormesis, which means just the right amount of a thing. And so with these guys, we're always trying to balance just the right amount of stress. And so if they're getting stress from other sources, we tend to back off on our artificial stress we're giving them. And then the other handling exercises we do with them is we just do some daily massage starting at a week old. So this is Charm. And so we would just take Charm out and practice if she's comfortable on her back. And if not, we would practice on her side or on her belly. But we just practice handling her in different ways. So these guys tend to love having the inside folds of their ears massaged and their cheeks. And then kind of as they relax, we'll handle the rest of their head, we'll stroke them along their body, practice stroking them along all their limbs, just so that they're starting to develop really positive associations by being handled by people. And that's kind of our daily routine, is a couple times a day of massage, and then the once a day of the early neural stimulation, some housekeeping for their box, and daily weight checks. And then starting today, they'll start their first round of dewormer. So we'll be doing that every day as well for the next 3 days.
Nice. Well, we have a few questions here, but before we get to that, you've introduced Charm and Hex. Do you want to tell people what the rest of the names in this litter are?
Yeah, so this guy here, this is Jest with the tan color collar. This is Abra with the purple collar. This guy with the just absolutely massive face is Jinx.
I'd be very handsome.
And then the guy over here basking on the heat of the heating pad. Oh, yeah, stretch. This is Revel. And so you can see their eyes are still closed, but they're about to open any time now. They've opened up enough that we can see their little eyelashes now. So we're definitely getting close.
Nice. Oh, goodness. Well, hello to everybody who's joined us. We've got a lot of folks on today, and a special hello to Dana McLean, who's saying hi from Souk.
Hi, Tina.
Used to be part of our whelping crew. So Fanny is asking how many puppies in this litter, and then Nicole is asking what's the largest size of largest litter pads it's ever had.
So there's 6 in this litter. Unfortunately, she was expecting 8, and we ran into some complications at the end of the delivery, and so we ended up with 6 healthy puppies. And the largest litter we've had is 12, but we had a litter of 1 born the same week. And so that litter wasn't all reared together. Tracy and her family reared 8, and then 4 of those puppies moved over to Lori and her family, who had a Littleton puppy. The largest litter that's all been reared together is 11. So 11 is a lot of work.
And that was our motorcycle litter, right?
That's the motorcycle litter.
Oh, and those guys are just starting. I think some of them are starting to come into advanced training. So that was
They are.
years ago. So so Nicole also asked how many pups stay at pads and how many are going to go to other ADI schools. Do you know?
We kind of have a number for all of our spring litters. I think I went over it with Nicole and Susie next week. I think the current plan is that we keep 30. And so we already know that in some of our litters, we have puppies committed to other schools. And then depending on how many puppies we end up with, once our last girl, Chai, whelps on the 24th, we will then have an idea proportionally of how many puppies we're going to send away from every litter. So with these guys at this point, I'm not sure how many are going to stay and how many are going to go, but we'll kind of know by the end of the month where we stand there.
So a few questions about her C-section, Jackie. I'm going to kind of lump them together here. So you did mention, and I laughed when you said it, that they were nursing during her C-section. They weren't actually nursing during the C-section, but they did nurse off of her right before she went into surgery, correct?
They did. So she wouldn't be engorged and she would be more comfortable for the surgery. And it would be a little bit easier for the vets to get in there without, having to worry about the mammary tissue in the way and stuff.
And then the other question is with having a C-section, does that mean she can't be bred again in the future?
Nope. When we have a C-section, we evaluate the reason that we needed to have a C-section. In her case, it was because of a malpresented puppy, which is just kind of unlucky rather than being something physically wrong with her. So puppies, yes, you're way too big for a newborn puppy, but puppies would be normally born either head first or they would be born kind of rear end first and all bundled together. And she had a puppy that had one leg coming up and one leg coming down. And so it was really stuck because it made the pelvis too wide to pass through the birth canal. And then unfortunately when a puppy is dead in utero, which this puppy, it seems like it may have already been deceased before labor started, it doesn't have its natural movements and its natural resistance in terms of helping to move itself along the birth canal.
And Sarah's asking, how is Nev doing now, healing up? She seems to be doing pretty well.
Oh, she's great. I had to keep her on leash because she'd try and run when she went out in the backyard. So she didn't really miss a beat from it. Fortunately, she kind of didn't have any ill effects in terms of her digestive health and stuff. So that was good. And the vets did a beautiful job with her incision. It was all internal sutures and glue. And so aside from just monitoring it to make sure that there was nothing wrong with it, there's no sutures that have to come out or that we worry about getting snagged or anything like that.
Yeah. And she's clearly producing primo based on the funkiness of her puppies. So,
and it's one thing I wanted to, if there's not a question, Tara, if there's a question, I'll hold on.
Oh, go ahead.
So one thing I wanted to mention is Nav's kind of one of these dogs that I love her to bits, and I would describe her as an adequate mom. And what I mean by an adequate mom is, she got into the box because I came in. She'd nursed the puppies all morning. They were pretty good, but then I came in and she thought, okay, well, I'll come in because Jackie's going to be here. But quite often during the day, she's really happy to be out of the pen and with the family. She's not afraid to let her puppies struggle a little bit. And so if they can't reach her, she doesn't tend to get really apprehensive. She doesn't whine for us to come and take care of them. And as far as I'm concerned from my position at PADS, adequate moms are actually quite beneficial. You'd think that you want a mom who dotes over her puppies and who makes things really easy for them. But the problem with that can be that the puppies actually never have any kind of struggle, and so they don't develop any resilience. And if you have a mom that is feeling anxious, they haven't done many studies in dogs. They've done one that I know of, but they've done a lot of studies in rats that they think transition over. And so if you have a mom that's very nervous, then she tends to nurse in positions like standing up and roached over so that the puppies have to struggle a little bit to get to the milk. And they tend to then feed off of that stress and the position that she nurses in, and they tend to develop more stressed personalities as they get older. So there was one study that was done fairly recently on a population of guide dogs that actually found that the best puppies were produced out of moms who made the puppies struggle. So the best ones were actually out of moms who would lay flat in the whelping box and actually make the puppies root under to try and get to the nipples to work. So we do tend to see that our moms who are adequate moms are the moms that really produce quite resilient working stock.
Yeah. So a couple more questions. Callista's asking how many PADS dogs on average end up with something wrong, such as a heart problem, etc. So
heart problems are very unusual for us. We will have dogs that will go in for breeding clearance, for instance, and every once in a while the vets will say, I wouldn't breed this dog. It's not that they have clinical heart disease, but it's just that the results are what they call equivocal. They're not clear. They're not a clear cut, yes, everything's normal. And so they say, put this dog into training. It's not going to be an issue for the dog. But with heart issues, with breeding, you don't want to play around with it because unfortunately what it translates to tends to be high mortality for the mom during labor and delivery. So we don't mess around with heart problems in our breeding stock. But what we tend to see more than heart problems, the biggest problem in our colony would definitely be allergies. And that's kind of across the board for Labradors right now. And then some eye conditions, usually not significant enough that they can't be working dogs, but significant enough that we wouldn't include them in breeding because they're genetic. We are working diligently to try and move our colony away from a disease called copper toxicosis, which they're not clinically affected with, but there's been a gene identified that predisposes them to the risk. And so we're steering our colony away from that right now. But all in all, I can't remember, I'd done the chart for last year for some puppy classes. And I think our medical releases were around 8%. So it's not really significant in terms of the reasons that we're releasing dogs.
Yeah. And the vast majority of those right now fall in that allergy category. Yeah. So Gwyneth is asking, did Nav miss the 2 puppies that passed away?
No, our mom, it really tends to be that real kind of natural pragmatism that kicks in, where even if you have a stillborn puppy in the whelping box, the mom tends to be fairly indifferent to it. She kind of, noses it, nothing happens, and she moves on to her living puppies. We've only had it once, but we had one puppy that was a fading puppy, and the mom kept taking him out of the box and putting him away because she knew he wasn't healthy and she didn't want him with the rest of his litter. And the breeder caretakers would bring him back and she'd take him out and put him away again. So they tend to be quite pragmatic about survival.
Yeah. It's interesting trying to wrap your brain around the idea of like knowing how many puppies are in utero. And, certainly with Nav as well, having a C-section, like she wouldn't have even seen those puppies probably. So, good questions, everybody. So lots of questions coming in today. Give me 1 second, just scrolling through. Nicole says, I love it, Jackie. You're so honest about every dog, and I mean that very much in a good way. So, and thank you, Bill, for your kind words. And Sandra, who's one of our brand new breeder caretakers with Valentine, has joined us. So thanks for being here. And a few people, I think I saw this comment twice, but a few people are commenting that they were relieved that we changed their names after April Fools.
Oh, although this guy here was Pudding Pie, and Puddin would have been a suitable name for him. He is a dumpling.
Well, we'll have to pass that on to his puppy raiser. He can keep a nickname. But yeah. So for those of you that are just joining us, I see our numbers have been going up over the last few minutes. We're here with Jackie Clark, who is PADS' breeding manager, as well as our puppy, one of our puppy raising program managers. And she's here with PADS Nav and the prank litter. So for those of you that were around on April Fool's Day, you may have seen some spectacular names announced for these puppies, which were then changed to make them the prank litter. So we've got a Revel and a Just and Hex and
Pinks and Abra and Charm.
Abra and Charm. So if you have,
I don't know how well it shows up on the video, but I don't know if you can see, we've got baffles now under the blanket in the whelping box, and that just helps as these guys are starting to get up on their feet. It helps them to start to develop their musculature, as opposed to just having everything flat, where you can end up with puppies that have some flat chests or where their back ends slip out a bit too much as they walk. So we're starting to add little bits of stress into their life, with the goal of kind of helping them to develop that resilience as they go forward.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. They're very peaceful today.
They're
Uh,
always very peaceful. They are such a quiet litter. Knock on wood, because I know it may not last, but whew, right now they are a quiet litter.
Yeah.
Tara, I don't know if you don't have questions too. If you want, we could talk about how they're a multi-sire litter.
Oh, that would be cool. We have one more question, so I'm going to ask that. And then if you want to talk about the multi-sire litter, that would be very interesting. So Shelly is asking, how often do the puppies nurse each day?
They kind of free feed when they want to, so it depends. Like right now, Jinx here is still hanging on. I don't know how much he's nursing, but if Nav stays in here, they'll kind of migrate back and forth and back and forth. So it's kind of hard to say. But generally at this age, we'd expect them to be nursing at least 6 times a day. And today's the last day of daily weights, but up until now, we've done daily weights. And that way, if a puppy hasn't gained weight or hasn't gained much weight from one day to the next, then we know we need to get them on and nursing more. And then if they still didn't gain weight, then we would start supplementing them with some formula. But these guys, there's been a couple little dips where somebody's only gained 10 or 20 grams in a day, and then the next day they tend to gain like 140. So they've been all right.
So tell us about, because on our social media, I've had several people ask, who is the dad of this litter? There's a fun answer to that question. So
there's a fun answer to that question is we don't know. And the fact that we don't know is deliberate. That wasn't an oopsie. So we had picked out a really nice stud dog from a school in Maryland. And our genetic material gets shipped to us in styrofoam coolers. And the first day that it arrived, it was only about 15% viable, which is not usually enough to sustain a conception. So we did do an artificial insemination that day. And then the next day, FedEx lost our package. So we pulled in one of our stud dogs, Zegan, for a natural breeding that second day to ensure that we were going to achieve a conception if we had only put in our shipment at 15%, we would be worried that, either we wouldn't have a litter or that we would end up with a litter of one, and a litter of one is not really ideal if we can help it. And so at that point we were in for a dime, in for a dollar. And so we put Zegan over her, and what will happen is over the next couple of weeks, I'll take the puppies out for their body handling and just kind of sit in front of the TV at night with a different puppy every night so that they are away from their litter and their mom for between half an hour and an hour. And then I'll use just some little brushes that are used usually to clean your braces to rub on the inside of their cheek and collect saliva from them. And we'll ship saliva samples off from all of them, the 2 possible dads, and Nav to the laboratory, and they will come back with parentage results for us. And so we'll see if we end up with both dads represented, or if we only have one dad represented. We can't tell from color. Some people have asked, do we know that the black puppies are necessarily Zegans? No, both Guy and Zegan are black dogs that carry yellow. So we can't tell based on that. So we need to do our DNA testing.
So tell us some of the other reasons, because this is not the only situation in which we do a dual sire litter. We've done it intentionally in the past when there haven't been problems with shipping. So
we have. So sometimes it'll be a case of we can't get a FedEx shipment in Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, and so we have to get one in for Friday. And so we'll ask the school that's sending us the samples to send us samples from 2 different dogs so that we have 2 breeding units. And sometimes we are looking at basically genetically achieving 2 litters. And so if we have 2 different dads in there, then some of the puppies are half siblings. And so when we're looking at selecting from breeding stock, it gives us a little bit more diversity to select from. Or, if we feel that we have some different needs that could be met, or we have one stud that's a little bit older, and we don't know how good his fertility is going to be, we would lead off with him the first day, and then follow with a younger, more fertile stud a day or 2 later.
Shelly's saying, should we start a guessing game of who's the dad?
Yeah.
That could be a fun fundraiser. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just looking to see what other questions have come in. We've got them all. But for those of you that have just dialed in, I see our numbers going up here again on Facebook. If you have any questions for Jackie, we'll be on for about another 3-4 minutes. Feel free to post them in the comments, or if you're watching on Zoom, feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box. So if you click on the Q&A, you can then enter a question and we'll answer it live on the air.
Jackie. Here I don't know how well you'll be able to see, but if I hold up their little ears, can you see there that their ears are still sealed?
Yeah.
So their ears stay sealed until about 3 weeks, and that's when they'll move out of the transitional period and into the socialization period. And then you're asleep, but just the little corner of her eye here is starting to open up, I noticed. So it's not uncommon to have puppies reach their developmental milestones a couple of days apart, but kind of once we see one puppy enter the next developmental stage, we treat every puppy as if they're in the next developmental stage, because we don't want those puppies that are slightly ahead to miss out. And certainly the experiences are not going to harm the puppies that are a little bit farther behind. So once their eyes are open, we start putting in big colorful things for them to see. And then the next stage, we can tell they move into it because they start having a startle reflex because they can hear. And then so then we start incorporating sound as well into their socialization.
Nice. Well, thank you, Jackie, for being with us today. It looks like we've come to the end of our questions. And also a huge thank you to Lenny, who jumped on and has been captioning this for those watching on Zoom. If you ever know somebody that wants to watch but needs the closed captioning, it is available by registering through our Tune In Tuesday page. Facebook, unfortunately, poses some challenges, but you do have the option of clicking auto captions on Facebook and it will automatically caption our words there. So if you want to get notified every week of who our guests are and who's going to be coming on, you can sign up at pads.ca/tune-in-tuesday. And there's hyphens between the tune and the in and the Tuesday. And lots of thank yous streaming in here, Jackie, particularly for the scientific info, very interesting. And yeah, it's always a pleasure to have Jackie on because she gives us all the sciencey stuff in the background and the thought that goes into our breeding and rearing of our puppies. It's one of the things I love about PADS is how research driven everything we do is. So thank you to all of you that have joined us, and feel free to give us a follow on social media and you can watch these little monkeys grow up. It's happening very fast. So, and we will see you all next Tuesday.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everyone.